and Steve in the morning with a treat today. Conversation with Callie Daruk. Callie, welcome. We're so glad that you're able to join us.
Thank you, Dawn and Steve. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Well, you've written a book, What Does God Want You to Do Before You Die? I mean, that's a really big question. And I would think that's a question that some of us may think about, toward the end of life. Mm-hmm. Looking at you, you're not toward the end of life. You're young. So what got you thinking down thinking about a question like that?
Oh, it is an important question, and it is a big question, Steve. This book was unexpected. In fact, I had the honor in 2019 of attending a secular speech at Belmont University. And the gentleman that was speaking talked about, what do you want to do before you die? And all the audience was giving their huge announcements, making their bucket list, really answering that question. But God was downloading something in me. Because every time he said, what do you want to do before you die? In my heart, I began to hear, Callie, what do I want you to do before you die? And I knew, yes, sir, that's the question.
That's the question, but how did you get there? Because I kind of think there is a backstory here that's pretty huge. As you started to answer that question, the Lord was laying on your heart.
Absolutely. There was a backstory. I had become acquainted with life's fragility in such a powerful way. What year was it? 2007, I delivered twin boys 10 weeks premature, and that took my family on a journey unlike anything I could have imagined. One of my sons, Isaiah, had spent the first 7 consecutive months of his life at Vanderbilt Children's Hospital. He developed a deadly illness at 8 weeks of age called necrotizing enterocolitis, and it resulted in the loss of much of his intestines. And that ended up turning into a 7-month stay at Vanderbilt Children's. He then went into liver failure. He was then life-flighted to Boston, Massachusetts, to their children's hospital to undergo an experimental drug. And we were told, get anyone you ever want to see this baby and say goodbye. Babies don't recover from this. But God, in his gracious mercy, he had other plans. So I had been very well acquainted in all of the experiences. 324 consecutive days Isaiah spent in the 2 hospitals, 13 surgeries. We were told on multiple occasions that he will not live. So life's fragility had been put into the forefront of my mind and heart in a very personal way.
What did that do to your faith? Because, when we face big challenges and big things, when they're short, I think sometimes we can weather them. Or when they're longer, but they're not real big, I think sometimes we can weather them. But to weather a storm like that for as long as you did, that had to have a huge impact.
Oh, Steve, it absolutely did. It exposed my faith. It exposed my heart for what it was, and it was not what I thought it was. I grew up in the church. I professed to know Jesus Christ for 32 years. But when a storm of epic proportion came along, like I often say, most structures look pretty sturdy on the outside, but you let a storm like that come along and it breaks down those walls. I became angry. I became bitter. I became resentful. I didn't know. I had more on me than I knew how to handle. So what I have come to discover, though, Steve, is that it's a mercy that God would expose me. My heart needed to be exposed so that it could be healed.
Callie, you say you're a recovering Pharisee. What does that look like? Take us down that journey just a little bit further.
In the exposing of my heart, in such a beautiful, miraculous way, in 2011, through a precious friend of mine, God exposed my heart. He spoke to the Pharisees, Jesus did, and he said, this people draws near me with their mouth, but their heart is far from me. And in a beautiful way, after much pain, much difficulty, much ugliness, to be honest, God exposed me through that beautiful Bible verse and my friend. And I knew that's exactly what I had done. And alone in my bedroom at 32 years of age, 9 years ago, I met Jesus Christ. And I have been on a journey for these last 9 years of really asking myself this very question, Lord, who are you and what do you have for me? Because I want to give you every breath, every moment, every second of my life, because I see how fleeting and fragile it really is.
I think that there may be some listening today who, really think they know Jesus and they've been raised in the church and they, call themselves a Christian because, well, I'm not a Muslim or a Buddhist or this or that. I'm not an atheist, so I must be a Christian. What was it that you realized, man, I don't know Jesus?
Wow, that right there is why I speak. It's why I write, because my heart goes out to those who feel they are, but they may or may not be. And for me, I think that moment was when I began to go through such pain. I began to say things I never thought I would say, to do things I never thought I would do. I had never seen the darkness of Callie Daruk's heart. I'd been told that I needed Jesus Christ, and I mentally understood that, and I was on board with that, but I had never seen the darkness of my heart.
That's such a powerful statement. And to see the darkness and then to pivot, was it an immediate pivot or was there a journey in that?
For me, it was an immediate pivot. I grew up thinking, oh man, these people have these incredible testimonies, but it was immediate because it was a day when it was a brutal day. And then my dear friend she'd had a dream. God had showed her a dream, and she had a beautiful relationship with Jesus. And I remember thinking, is that real? How can you do that? Yeah. But she'd had a dream about our family, and she called and shared that dream.
Well, we're going to continue the conversation with Callie Daruk coming up in just a few moments. She's written a book entitled, What Does God Want You to Do Before You Die? We'll link you to that when you head to our Facebook page. It's Don and Steve in the Morning. Thanks for tuning in here to Moody Radio Nashville. You're listening to Don and Steve in the Morning here on Moody Radio Nashville. Glad that you've joined us as we continue talking with Callie Daruk. She's written a book, What Does God Want You to Do Before You Die? 30 devotions to help you begin living your purpose. But before we talk a little bit about that, Callie, I want to back up and pick up where we just were. You had come to this point where you realized you didn't really know Jesus. Your heart was exposed. You were seeing things that you did not like, and there was an immediate transformation. What did that transformation look like? I mean, how did God change you?
So my friend had contacted me earlier and said, I've had a dream that I need to share with you. I was not at a place to receive it. And one particular day, I was ready. And I contacted her and said, I need to know what you dreamed, and I need to know now. And she shared her dream with me. And she said, Callie, at the end of this dream, the Lord showed me that this had happened to you because you had drawn near him with your mouth only and never your heart. And there was something powerful about those words. And I immediately began to weep, and I said, I have to go. And I hung up the phone, and alone on my bedroom floor at 32 years of age, despite a 32-year profession of knowing Jesus, I fell on my face alone with nothing but the darkness of my heart. And when he should have rejected me, he received me. And such a beautiful peace filled my heart, and it was life transforming. And I have never been the same since. But I got up off that floor knowing this very question: I will give you my whole heart. None of Callie, all of you, Lord, from this moment forward.
When you look at going forward and you've got a child with special needs, you have 2 children with special needs at that point, yes?
Yes, I did.
So you have that, you have this huge exposure of knowing that all of a sudden, the 32 years I thought I was following Jesus, I really wasn't. It was just lip service. Now it's a new day, but you still have some circumstances that are challenging. What was the first step as you headed toward maybe writing this book or taking the next step in your walk with Jesus? What did that look like for you?
A book was nowhere on the radar. It was survival mode for sure. But 4 days later, actually just before 4 days later, God is so gracious to confirm his word. So my friend had this dream, and honestly, at that point, I was a little weary of some things that church people had to say, quite frankly.
No doubt.
Yeah.
But this woman, she knew Jesus, and you knew it to know her. So the next day, I opened my Bible, And where did it fall open to? Because it was a little dusty, to be honest. I hadn't picked it up in a while. And it opened to Matthew, where Jesus is talking to the Pharisees, and he says, "Woe unto you, hypocrites, scribes, and Pharisees. Well do you clean the outside of the cup and make it appear beautiful, but inside is filth and hypocrisy and dead men's bones. This people draw near me with their mouth only, and their hearts are far from me." Those very words that he'd given her in her dream, he showed me in his word, and I knew that was him speaking to me. So I was terrified, to be honest. I was terrified of failing because all I'd ever known was all I'd known, and all I'd ever done was what I had done, and I knew I would mess it up again.
Yeah.
But my friend, again, had a beautiful phrase. Callie, have more faith in God's ability to keep you than in your ability to fail. I clung to those words. And 4 days later, on February the 18th of 2011, I began journaling. And my first journal entry was not Dear God, Dear Diary, Dear Journal.
Yeah.
It was Dear God.
Yeah.
And the entry went something like this. I want to give you my whole heart, but I don't know how.
I think a lot of people are there. They want to give God their whole heart. They don't know how. We could probably spend an entire hour talking about just that right there. But as you then began to get to know God and give him your heart, and I'm sure that's been a process and will be the rest of your life, have you come to the point where you're able to at least somewhat answer the question in the title of your book, what does God want you to do before you die?
Absolutely. For me personally, it is to understand life in light of eternity, that we are not, the measure of time that we are given is uncertain. And why are we here? It's a question we all have from the time we can think. Why are we here, God? You put me here for a purpose. And as we look around at our world right now, we are needed. Our voice is needed. And the phrase that comes to me is, Callie, be at your post. So what do I want? What does God want me to do before I die? It's to be here with you today, to share this story, to speak even when it's uncomfortable, to go even when you don't want to go, but to live each moment knowing that it could be your last. And what have I done? Lord, I want to hear good, well done. And so I want to be at my post and be serving the Lord with all of my heart.
So, Callie, I know you speak. I know you have the book. What does that look like kind of on a day-to-day basis for you, a week-to-week basis as a mom, as a wife? What does following Jesus look like today?
Oh, goodness. It means waking up, having quiet time with the Lord. Because if I don't spend time with him first, none of this can be at the expense of that. That's one thing that I've learned. And that's how I came to fall in love with him. Spending time with him in his word, it cannot be sacrificed. Loving my husband, loving my children, those in that order, because that those are so important. And when I have done those, then when God allows opportunities like this to speak and to minister and to share and to write, then I take them.
Yeah.
My goodness, it's a challenge. Especially if you've grown up in the church like you have shared, growing up in the church thinking you're checking all the spiritual boxes and then understanding, but praise God that he met you in that moment, because as you've mentioned this morning, eternity hangs in the balance and we're not promised tomorrow. What a testimony. And we're so grateful in our short time together that you've been able to share this. Callie Daruk is with us as we're looking at a book. What does God want you to do before you die? And that first step is that relationship with him. Thanks for joining us this morning. Of course, it's connected to our Facebook page, Dawn and Steve in the Morning, Moody Radio.